It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Rob Farrett.
And I'm Kate Archer-Kent. President Trump's signature legislation, his spending and tax cut bill, passed the House on Thursday by one vote.
Now it's the Senate's turn to tackle this massive package and negotiate with factions in the GOP who want to see the bill overhauled, with aggressive cuts to avoid raising the national debt and return to 2019 spending levels.
The bill includes changes to SNAP benefits, Medicaid, state and local tax deduction or SALT, student loans, and more.
We're getting reactions from Wisconsin's congressional delegation on what's titled the Big Beautiful Bill.
Democratic U.S. Representative Gwen Moore joins us now. She represents Wisconsin's 4th Congressional District, which includes much of Milwaukee County. Representative Moore, welcome back to Wisconsin Today.
Oh, I'm so delighted to be with you, Kate.
Let's just get some of your top line takeaways from the bill, the Big Beautiful Bill.
Well, I think the Big Beautiful Bill starts out with a premise that we got to find $4.5 billion to extend tax cuts in the 2017 bill and just work backwards from that. So we'll cut $300 billion out of SNAP. We'll cut, $700 and so billion out of Medicaid, and come up with over $1 trillion worth of cuts. And, that's not enough money to give the big, beautiful billionaires their bonanza. So we'll just raise the debt limit by another $4 billion and put the rest on the credit card. So and we will be very cynical and sinister. We will defame the recipients of SNAP and Medicaid and make them seem like losers and takers in order to justify these cuts. And then the top line is to warn people that if we don't pass this bill, everybody's taxes are going to go up. And the pathetic thing about that, Kate, is that they make temporary little boosts to the income of people at the lower end of the income spectrum. And so by 2029, these people will see a huge tax increase because, of course, this was only a teaser, as it were, to get people to believe that they were getting something for nothing. And what we found, top line, is that if you're making, $50,000 a year, say, your refund is going to be $265, while portions of this bill, like the 199A pass through meant for small businesses, really gets people as much as $115 million in tax break.
Clearly, you're very concerned about the safety net programs and what will happen to them. Are there any parts of this bill that you agree with?
No. They boosted the child tax credit, which was wonderful, but they left out 17 million of the poorest kids to say that if their parents don't have any income or very little income, or not at least $2,500 worth of work, that they can't get one dime of that tax credit. So that, a couple making up to $400,000 a year can get the benefit of a child tax credit. And everybody needs this because we don't have a child care system that's adequate for people. We don't have early childhood. And that's a whole topic I wish you'd invite me back for. But, the poorest kids don't get the benefit or not the full benefit of it. I hate this big, ugly bill.
Turning to healthcare, in Wisconsin, over 1 million people are enrolled in Medicaid programs. The work requirement is certainly a controversial point here. This is asking for able-bodied adults on Medicaid, having a work requirement. Why would that be problematic to you?
When you ask it like that, Kate, you just think, well, sure. But who is an able-bodied person? They've raised the age to 64. How many people do you know, Kate, who are 60 years old, 50 years old that are already experiencing signs of aging. They've got diabetes, they've got terrible arthritis. Can you imagine some 55-year-old man climbing up on the roof to repair it? Or even, some woman who has, diabetes and is very obese, and she hasn't been determined to be disabled by the Social Security Administration. It's just somebody's view that, oh, you're 63, and even though you're telling me that you have sciatica and you cannot stand up and wait tables for 4 hours a day, we're going to cut you off. It's a cynical way to come up with, 700, $800 billion of money to declare someone able-bodied. And Kate, I don't know if you've ever experienced, but we have a hard time helping our constituents get Social Security benefits. I hope we get to talk about that. It's hard to get on the program, when you are obviously disabled.
There is an added senior tax deduction in this bill. What do you think of that?
Temporary. It's all a game to come up with this money for permanent tax cuts for the wealthiest people of our society. And a senior cut, if they've wiped out in the president's budget the social services block grant fund. That's the fund that gives people Meals on Wheels, that really serves a lot of seniors. You know, you're trading it for what? Some temporary pittance, some gain for the social services block grant. I know I had the privilege, one occasion that really, really stuck in my mind, delivering Meals on Wheels to an elderly person. And they also had a dog. We were delivering dog food as well. I mean, that person was glad to see us, and the dog was happy that we arrived with the food. This is the kind of stuff that's going to be cut out. We're going to cut so much Medicaid that people may not be able to get services in their homes and be forced into nursing homes because the state will have to elect what Medicaid services to cut. Is that worth it?
I'm going to pause right here as we talk with U.S. Representative Gwen Moore of Milwaukee, looking at the massive spending and tax bill passed the House last week. All House Democrats voted against it. There is major disagreement on this bill about the deficit, and U.S. Senator Ron Johnson calling the bill's spending, saying it was, quote, mortgaging our children's future. He's calling for roughly $6 trillion in spending cuts. Let's listen to Johnson on CNN State of the Union on Sunday about the approach he'd take.
You start with a reasonable pre-pandemic level spending. You've heard people talk about zero-based budgeting. I'm talking about a budget of 5.5 to 6.5 trillion. Those are options from Clinton, Obama, and Trump, where you just take their actual outlays, plus them up by population growth and inflation, leaving Social Security, Medicare, and interest untouched.
Okay, so is there a way to support people in safety net programs but not add to the national debt?
Yeah, you cannot give these big tax cuts to the wealthiest people. These tax cuts cost, when you consider 2017 and what we're doing now, $10 trillion. They've added $10 trillion. Now, we've added money to the debt because we gave people rescue checks during the pandemic, but just for these tax cuts. We cannot give these people now, but he's not proposing that. I assume that he's saying that we ought to cut more. And given the inflation and the tariffs, the other stuff we're going through, think about cutting more SNAP, making more requirements, really undermining the ACA, so-called Obamacare. That's really what they're doing, as well as cutting Medicaid, so that premiums will balloon up to $400 or $500 a month more if they want to get these healthcare premiums, really undermining the ACA. And if you increase people's expenses to that extent, and then cut the safety net, we're asking for a really austere population And when people say we're moving into a recession or into a stagflation, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. And Kate, I want to just slip this in. There are other parts of this bill that are ugly, like the provisions that provide Donald Trump and his administration with immunity from judicial review, where he can stop elections. These are other parts of the bill that have really, really been ignored. And you wonder, that where states won't be able to regulate AI. There are really, really, really horrible parts of this bill that the
Representative,
public.
I do want to get your quick take here. There are sources saying that GOP senators are vowing to rewrite this bill. Should they? How do you see this playing out in the Senate?
Well, you know what? What I see is that it'll stop the big beautiful bill from going through as it is now. I don't know exactly. I did have an opportunity to chat with Senator Johnson about the bill, and he shared with me that there was a lot of consternation, but they're split. There are people there that don't want to see the deep Medicaid cuts. Then there are other people who are concerned about the debt. So it'll be really interesting to see how they rewrite it in a way that people in the House, and of course, there are people in the House that think we need deeper cuts, and there are a whole lot of people in the House that voted for the bill, and they're praying that it doesn't pass because they don't want the deep Medicaid cuts, because they have heard from their constituents that they want their hands off it, and not to mention the $500 billion worth of Medicare that will be triggered by cuts in Medicare.
Representative
Yeah.
Moore, thank you for joining us.
And thank you for having me, Kate.
That is Democratic U.S. Representative Gwen Moore of Milwaukee talking about the massive spending bill that just passed the House. Moore is a member of the House's powerful tax writing committee, Ways and Means.
Coming up on Wisconsin Today, Wisconsin hosts a major women's golf tournament this week. Find out why Wisconsin is on the map in the golf world.
It was a sleeping giant, but now Wisconsin does nothing to hide its love of golf.
That's next here on WPR News.
It's Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. This week, Erin Hills Golf Course in eastern Wisconsin hosts the 2025 U.S. Women's Open, where players from all over the world compete.
Wisconsin has hosted a number of major tournaments in the last decade, and new players, especially women, have been picking up clubs and hitting the links.
Wisconsin has gone from a hidden gem into the golf world to an unhidden gem. Last year, Golf Digest ranked the state as #1 for public play courses.
So what goes into creating a course that can host a group of the best golf professionals and amateurs in the world?
In the run-up to the event, last week I talked to Jim Lombardo, head golf professional at Erin Hills, and Sue Shapcott, a former Pro Tour player and founder and director of Change Golf Instruction in Madison. Jim, Erin Hills in the national, even international spotlight. What does it take to get a course ready to rock for an event like this?
Well, thanks for asking. Yeah, it's been a couple year process where the USGA, a lot of site visits ahead of this year's championship. They'll want to get the course set up the way they want it for the championship. So they'll work with our turf department on preparations that are even needed as far as early as last summer as to how, we're going to prepare the golf course, especially when we put it to bed in the fall to get ready for what we need it to look like for this spring. But, as far as infrastructure and all that, all these site visits that they've been doing and all of their planning, it takes a good couple of years to get ready to put on this championship. And, we've been working carefully with them, and I think we're ready to go.
And Sue, can you put it into perspective for us? How big a deal is it to have this U.S. Women's Open Championship here in Wisconsin?
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, as we know, then Wisconsin is a very strong golf state. Lots of good players, lots of good courses, and so when we have championships here in Wisconsin, then it just energizes the golf population even more. So it's just a good deal all round.
Jim, this is, I think, only the third time we've hosted this here in Wisconsin. It's your first go for Erin Hills. What does it take to get, an event like this that could happen anywhere in the country here in Wisconsin?
Well, obviously we're selected by the USGA, and it kind of helps that we've had other championships before. Obviously, we had the 2017 U.S. Open, 2011 U.S. Amateur, 2008 U.S. Women's Amateur Public Links, and the 2022 United States Mid Amateur Championship. So, I mean, that all really helps in their selection process. But they go nationwide to try and find the best places to host their championships, and I think they really like what we have to offer infrastructure-wise and staff-wise for this championship and golf course-wise. So all of that goes into, takes into account for awarding us this championship, and we're just very fortunate to have been awarded this one.
Sue, Jim is the host. You've been a participant in the U.S. Women's Open. What is going through the minds of these players as they reach the course and evaluate it and figure out how they're going to play it?
Yes, I played way back when in a U.S. Open at Oakmont, and the U.S. Open has always been the pinnacle of women's professional. I would say worldwide. So all players that are playing in this tournament, whether they are top ranked players, whether they've come into the field through qualifying, it's going to be a big deal. They're going to be excited. There's usually great fans, and that's going to be the case at Erin Hills. The course is going to be more challenging probably than any other that they play throughout the year. The course that I played at Oakmont, then, the greens, the members used to like to tell us that they were faster than Augusta, and I can believe it. So the course is going to be challenging. It's going to be set up hard. It's going to be in great condition. And just looking at the scorecard for Erin Hills, the setup there, then at Erin Hills, the course is also really long. So, Jim, I think I'm right in saying it's like you've got it set up at 68,000 yards for the Women's Open this week, which is a very long course. For any player, particularly for the Women's U.S. Open, and it looks like there's 7 par 4s over 400 yards, which back in my day when I played, that wasn't the case. So courses have gotten longer and longer for the Women's U.S. Open, making them even harder as the players have improved and got stronger and got better.
Oh, that's interesting, Jim. What goes into designing the holes, the courses here to set that challenge level?
Well, I mean, obviously Erin Hills is a very challenging golf course. And the one thing that we have is length out here. We can make this golf course stretch, and which we did for the U.S. Men's Open, up to 7,800 yards. Now, obviously the women are not going to play at that, but we have a variety of tee boxes out here where the USGA will come in and walk the golf course and figure out exactly how far they want this to play based on each hole and what tee boxes they're going to use. And it's the length. I think, every course is going to have a defense. And I think ours is going to be, the length. And obviously if it gets really windy or conditions change, we have the flexibility to move up or back on every hole. So I think the flexibility is what they look at.
So both of you have mentioned the challenge of the course. What goes into looking at a course and saying, oh, this one's challenging? So it's like length is part of it. I imagine where hazards are, that kind of thing. For us non-golfers out there, describe what we mean by a challenging course.
I would like to say that at this point in my career, any course is pretty challenging for me. But at the height of my career, then, is the rough. How thick is the rough? So if you miss the fairway by, a yard or 2 yards, how penalizing is it? There's some courses where, you can miss the fairway by 10 yards, 20 yards, and you're not that penalized. You can still play the next shot. Other courses, US Open courses, typically, you're just off the fairway and you're in thick rough where you might not even be able to, have a shot at the green. You might need to just pitch out onto the fairway. So, the penalty for mishits tends to be what makes the course hard. And then when you get onto the green, at these championship courses, then the greens tend to be hard and they tend to be fast. And so if you're on the wrong side of the pin, you can hit a great shot into the green. But if you're on the wrong side of the pin, then your putt is either going to go in or it's probably going to be a 3-putt. So, pin positions and green undulations also go into making it difficult.
Interesting. And Jim, as you design the course, I assume the Golf Association has something to say about it. Are you looking at each of those factors, those subtle things that I might look at and not even recognize?
Oh, she summed it up well. And like I said, it's the USGA. This is their show, so they're the ones that set up the golf course the way they want it. And we had a little input, but not much. They know about this place, so they know how to set it up. Yeah, I mean it's off the tee. Sue mentioned it. I mean, you got to be able to hit the fairways. If you don't out here, the rough is going to be long. The intermediate rough is going to be long. The fescue is starting to pop and grow, so that's going to be a challenge. But if you're in the fairway, and yes, the ability to hit greens in the green complexes and missing it. If you're going to miss it, you got to miss it on the right side out here, or you're going to be looking at larger numbers. So all of that goes into it. They've taken a lot of steps towards how they want to set up the golf course, and I think they've got it. I think they've nailed it. I think they got it great.
Let's name some names. Sue, who are you watching for in this tournament?
Well, I think Nelly Korda is always a good bet. I think she may be bookie's favorite for this year. She's got the game. She's long. She's shown that she can win. She likes winning. She enjoys the pressure. Last year's winner, Yuka Sasso, then, she's another good bet for this year. But, the women's game, the field is so deep now and so strong that, any players, or in theory, any player can win. Now, it's a lot to win your first tournament at the US Open, but potentially, all of these players in this field can win. So I'll be watching Nelly Korda. I'm also going to be watching out for a player from my home club in Bristol, England, called Callie McGinty. She was a qualifier that came through, and it's going to be for her first US Open. So I'm going to be pulling for her too.
We're talking about the 2025 U.S. Women's Open and the growing popularity of golf here in the state. We've got Jim Lombardo with us, Erin Hills Golf Course head professional, and Sue Shapcott, former Pro Tour player, head of Change Golf Instruction in Madison. Zooming out a little bit, Jim, I think, years ago I'd have conversations on the air about golf, and Wisconsin, I think, was seen as maybe this hidden gem or sleeper around the country. I don't know that that's true anymore. I think Wisconsin's really on the map now when it comes to golf. Do I have that right?
Oh, yeah. I think Wisconsin, based on course rankings now, I think at least in the top 2 as far as destination states for golf. Right up there with California, with obviously the Kohler complex and their, Whistling Straits and Black Wolf Run, and then Sand Valley added to that. Now you have a nice trifecta in this state of awesome destination golf that, if you would have said 25 years ago and listed all the championships that Wisconsin's had, U.S. Open, Ryder Cup, PGA Championships, U.S. Women's Open, United States Amateurs, you would have not bet that would have happened here. But now you look at 2025 and all the championships that Wisconsin's had, it's remarkable. And I know the whole state is very proud of golf we have.
And we've lured in players from as far away as Bristol, England. Sue, what is it that appeals to you about Wisconsin as somebody who's played at the pro level and now teaches golf?
Wisconsin like you said, it was a sleeping giant, but now Wisconsin does nothing to hide its love of golf. So even though we have a short season here, the golfers are absolutely golf mad. As soon as the snow clears, then players are out there just itching to get back out onto the course, and they stay that way until the courses close again. So it's really the enthusiasm for golf and the love of golf that makes Wisconsin a great state to be a golfer in, but also to have, a golf instruction business. Then, golfers want to learn, they want to improve, they love traveling to the various courses in Wisconsin that are world level, like Erin Hills and Sand Valley. And so in some ways, it is a surprising golfer's paradise here.
I agree. I talked to the USGA, and Erin Hills offers the infrastructure for what they need to put on a championship, because we're set, we're almost a blueprint for what they need. But in talking to them, it's the fan base. The Wisconsin fan base is one of the top reasons why they're here, along with our facility, of course. But they know that Wisconsin, when it comes to golf and being a fan, we bring it. So.
Sue, another thing that's changed over the years, women in golf, huge jump in numbers according to some recent data. I read somewhere you had a story going back a ways to a tournament. You showed up and there was a sign at the club. What was it? Something like no dogs or women?
That's right. So that was in 1988. That was the Curtis Cup, which is a match Great Britain and Ireland versus the United States. I was playing for Great Britain and Ireland, and the course was Royal St. George's, which is an open championship course in the UK. And at that time, then there was no women members allowed at the course. There wasn't any women's changing rooms, but it was where we played the Curtis Cup, and that was a sign that was in the parking lot as you rolled up into the course. Now, interestingly, that was however many years ago, and one of the things that golf bodies have done, certainly in the UK, is that if courses want to stay as part of the Open Championship operation, then they needed to address some of these inequalities for memberships and accessibility. So that sign is no longer there. Women are allowed to be members at the courses. And so the golf's governing bodies have, I think, done a nice job of leveraging the allure of major championships by getting courses to bring their membership up into the kind of modern era. And so, the United States is actually doing much better than the UK is. The US numbers, I think it's almost 30% or around 30% of all golfers in the US are women. Even 20 years ago, I think that was probably like 15 or 20. And in the UK, it still hovers around 15%. So women's golf in the US has really exploded in the last 10 years.
And Jim, from your vantage at Erin Hills for a couple decades now, have you seen that change? Have you seen more women playing, and maybe in the fan base for that matter?
Oh yeah. We've seen an uptick, and we're obviously trying to get more women out here to play golf. What we're really trying to shoot for is getting more groups of women to come out, kind of on a buddy trip type of thing, where they can get away and spend some time with their friends. Erin Hills, on a day-to-day basis, for women golfers, this course sets up great for them. It's almost better than it sets up for the men, I think, based on the tees they play. I think it's wonderfully challenging for them and breathtakingly beautiful. And we're trying to get more of those groups out here. And I think this championship is going to showcase that a lot more. And I think we'll see a lot more of that coming up.
Sue, another stereotype about golf is that it's kind of, an elite sport. I think that's been always less true in Wisconsin, is my understanding. But I understand in your work as a golf instructor, you are trying to make golf accessible to a wider variety of people. Can you talk about that a little?
Yes. One of the stereotypes, as you say, about golf is that it is elite and it's exclusionary. And it certainly can be that. But, golf is also an every man's game. Where I grew up in the UK, then golf is very accessible in terms of how much it costs to play. Club memberships there, still cost under $1,000 for a year's membership for unlimited golf. So, it is accessible. And it's accessible here in the States, particularly at public courses. And public courses are a great entryway into the game. And so with our programs with the City of Madison, then we make sure that our programs are affordable, they're accessible. We have group classes, we have private instruction, we have something for everyone. And we try and price our program so that, they're no more than if someone went to take a yoga class. And so, golf can be exclusionary, it can be expensive, but it doesn't have to be, and it isn't in many places. And so it is a game for everyone. It's got great health benefits, and getting more people experiencing golf and seeing the benefits that it brings to them, both health-wise, social-wise, is really what we're committed to with our programming at the City of Madison.
Jim, as we wrap up, I know a regular hobby in Wisconsin is watching the weather. I'm guessing over the course of this thing, nobody's going to be watching the weather closer than you. What are your hopes?
Well, I think the cruddy weather we had the last couple of days is gone now, and the long range forecast looks really, really good. So, we've been talking about the last couple of days with, rain and a little chilly here, get that out of the way, because the weather always rebounds around here. So the long range forecast looks really good. Looks like upper 60s, low 70s, pleasant temperatures to get out and watch golf, play golf, and enjoy the U.S. Women's Open. We think that the forecast looks great, and we're very happy about it.
We'll leave it there. Jim, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. It was a great time. Thank you for having me.
And Sue, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Sue Shapcott is founder and director of Change Golf Instruction based out of Madison. She's a former professional tour player. And Jim Lombardo is head golf professional for Erin Hills Golf Course, host of the 2025 U.S. Women's Open. I talked to them last week in the run-up to this week's tournament.
Still ahead, a Madison author's memoir looks into the untimely death of her brother decades ago and how he predicted it.
How could someone know these details and then also be okay with going to his death at 13 years old, and then to have a violent death is such a mystery.
The book, What My Brother Knew, that's next from WPR News. You're listening to Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Farrett. Right now it's time for Wisconsin Life. Here's producer Maureen McCollum with a story about a very special childhood creation.
It can be really sweet to look back on art projects you created in kindergarten. Maybe it's a finger painting or a stick figure portrait of your family. For John Klugness of Bayfield, he treasures a wooden corner shelf he made, a work of art he's had for about 90 years.
One of my earliest and most important memories is of building a wooden sidewalk with my dad in the summer of 1937, just before I turned 5 years old. We had recently moved from a rented house with no basement near Hammond Park, a house my mom disliked because she said she could see the ground through the floorboards. Mrs. Ram, originally from Ålesund, Norway, had helped her find our new home, an upstairs flat where we would live for the next decade. The apartment building was owned by a widow, Mrs. Lindberg. My parents discussed repairing the wooden sidewalk that ran from the front of the apartment to the back on our side. With Mom's encouragement, Dad took me with him to discuss the sidewalk with Mrs. Lindberg. Dad, unemployed at the time, offered to do the labor for free if she would cover the cost of the materials. I remember walking to Wilcutt's lumber yard with Dad. He had a wonderful sense of humor. As we approached the lumberyard, he adopted an exaggerated, comical Norwegian accent and quipped, "Vi vil cut wood." Shortly after, the lumber nails were delivered, and we got to work. We tore out the old sidewalk, and I became Dad's full partner in measuring, cutting, and nailing the slats. The new sidewalk went up quickly and looked grand compared with the broken gap-toothed one we replaced, and I felt such confidence knowing I could build a wooden sidewalk. That fall, I started kindergarten at the McCaskill Training School attached to the Superior Normal School for training teachers. The student teacher presented us with an assortment of wooden fruit boxes, fabric scraps, telling us we could make whatever we wanted as Christmas gifts for our families. A bathroom cabinet from a peach crate, a painted cigar box for jewelry case. But none of that interested me. I was a carpenter with bigger ambitions. When the teacher asked what I wanted to make, I declared I would build a corner shelf like the one my mom had recently admired at a relative's house. I insisted it had to be made from 4 pieces of plywood, 2 for the sides and 2 for the shelves. The relative had explained to Dad how he made his shelf, so naturally I needed the same materials and a plan to follow. The obliging student teacher borrowed the shelf plans and procured plywood and a coping saw from the school's woodworking shop. Our kindergarten had a workbench with a vise for sawing wood. Tracing the patterns and cutting the boards myself was challenging. I went through numerous saw blades, breaking them by cutting them too fast or twisting them in the wood. I learned to saw slowly and steadily to avoid snapping blades. Soon Christmas passed, then Dad's February birthday, with the shelf still nowhere near complete. I remember classmate Jim Wiesner, the tallest and fastest boy, confidently declaring I would never finish. Undaunted, I replied that maybe I wouldn't, but I also wouldn't give up. Finally, by Mother's Day in May, the shelf was done. Once I finished cutting the pieces, the teacher had them assembled in the wood shop, then provided stain and varnish for me to finish it. She noted in my report card that it was hard work, but worth the effort. To me and my parents, it was beautiful. From then on, my mom always proudly displayed that shelf in the living room or dining room of every home she lived in. The corner shelf taught me a lifelong lesson about the importance of persistence. That resolve has stayed with me ever since, sometimes strongly, sometimes less so, but always present.
Writer John Klugnes of Bayfield brought us that story on his 90-year-old corner shelf. Wisconsin Life is a co-production of Wisconsin Public Radio and PBS Wisconsin. Additional support comes from Lowell and Mary Peterson of Appleton. I'm Maureen McCullum.
This is Wisconsin Today.
As a boy, Jay Amelong predicted the accident that caused his death in May of 1981, down to the color of the car that hit him. He repeatedly told friends and family, "I will die young, it's not going to be much longer."
Jay's perplexing visions and acceptance of his tragic death at age 13 has had lasting impacts on his family and friends in Wisconsin.
Now, more than 40 years later, his older sister's new memoir explores the legacy of her brother. It confronts abuse and loss and traces a journey of healing and spiritual awakening.
Christina Amelong is a Madison native and author of What My Brother Knew. Christina, welcome to Wisconsin Today.
Thank you, Kate. It's so wonderful to be here in studio, even downtown.
Yes.
Wow.
Can you start with Jay? He had such an impact on the people all around him. What was he like?
Well, he was a wonderful human being. He was playful and adventuresome and also obnoxious. And for instance, recently I got in touch with a friend who I hadn't spoken to since like the day it happened. And she was saying he was always picking on me. But he was an average kid who was also very popular, as you read in the book. He really was kind, but he had this precognition where he saw his future. And so he's a very mysterious character, really.
But your mother would never talk to you about Jay's death. Why was that?
I know, it's just sad. I think she just was in so much pain about it, and she never had the opportunity to sort of process that grief. And also, she felt responsible, like since she knew somehow she should be able to stop it. So I think she just had such guilt about it. But also, it's funny, on my dog walk today, I ran into a guy who had a near-death experience. I know, right? Because I was telling him I got to come here today, and then we got to talking about the book. And his response was, well, that's not unusual. I had a heart attack and I died. And so then I got to hear his near-death experience. And he said, no one wants to talk to me about it, which it's so true. Like, I love talking about these subjects, death and precognition and the soul and all of that, but it's just a combination of scary and just so outside everyone's day-to-day experience that it's like, why would we talk about that, or what's the point? So,
but connect the dots there. How would sharing a near-death experience with you, how would that help you understand Jay?
Well, one thing is it gives you a direct experience of being in the mystery, and that there is this profound reality around that we have experiences after we die. And so for many years, it felt very tragic and horrible, and just my being was full of grief around Jay's death. And so connecting to other people who've had such unusual experiences, or who have touched into death or been with another person that is dying, A, it gives me another opportunity to heal, and B, you just feel inside your body like, oh, wow, you're kind of in the wow of it all. And so sadly, my mother could never get into the wow of it and open up to the conversation.
You write these words about how Jay knew it was just one of those unfathomable truths of the universe, like gravity or the speed of light. It became a myth, a family ghost story. Those words stuck with me. Was there something perhaps supernatural about his knowing?
Well, it was very supernatural, right? I mean, most people don't know. Even on a podcast last week, I was speaking to this woman who sort of knows about these things, in quotes. And she was saying that, and this is my experience too, because I've interviewed a lot of people, and that for the most part, when you're young and you're, going to die in the future, you wouldn't know, or your guardian angels or whatever would not tell you. She was saying that no one would say that. And so that whole LSD thing, that maybe he had been doing LSD prior, could give him access to that. And it's certainly true that in the scientific literature and all the work on psychedelics that people are doing these days, that there is other access to other dimensions from that medicine. But I've never been able to find a story like Jay's story in terms of having that kind of access a year and a half before, those kinds of details, seeing himself in the future like that, seeing himself above the body, knowing the color of the car. And so what do you think, Kate? How could someone know these details and then also be okay with going to his death at 12 years old, 13 years old, and then to have a violent death? It's just it's such a mystery.
We're talking about a new memoir. It's called What My Brother Knew, with Madison author Christina Amelong. Christina, through the process of writing, you also interview the person who hit Jay. What was that conversation like?
Well, again, I get shivers in my body as we enter into this part of the conversation. And it was also multidimensional in that I had wanted to call him many times over the years, but I just couldn't. And then one day I just spontaneously called him, and he answered, and I said, just so you know, if you don't want to be on this call, that's fine, because this is a funny call, or I said something like that. And he says, well, I'm a funny kind of guy. So right away, he had this beautiful sense of humor. And I instantly felt a very powerful connection with him, because Jay needed a green car, and his car was a green car. And so as we went along, there was just so much pain in the call, because the thing he said to me right away was an eye for an eye. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, my daughter died of a pharmaceutical drug overdose. And it's interesting, because then after that, I got the police report. And there's a lot of redaction that happened in the police report. And so not that we want, because this is a situation full of mystery. It's not like, we're trying to sue anyone or, blame anyone. But it seemed to me, and also from one of the stories that I got from one of the kids that was there at the time, maybe his pharmaceutical prescription had just changed, and he was assuming that he blacked out because of that. So I found out that he never saw the accident. He never saw Jay. I know, right? To black out for just like 3 minutes and have your car kill somebody. So he carried that and still does. I think he might have passed since then. I can't quite figure that out, but so much suffering in him. And if he's alive or if his family's alive, I just feel so much love towards them and want them all to know that they're part of this mystery, right? And the world is much bigger and more amazing and more painful than any of us can really hold. So it was full of love for me.
How did you get to the love?
Well, through all of that work that we talked about, but also because I have gotten to, Jay's death was a tragedy and it was horrible. And as you see or read in the book, I did see his body afterwards and he had been quite damaged. And so it was quite horrible. But there's this bigger reality going on about what happens to us or what is the human being? What is the soul? And so those questions, that mystery, the more I dive into it, the more I can connect to my own infinity and to this great, vast universe that we live in, and what is it all about? So to me, the human being is just such a beautiful, wondrous creature that is full of all this mystery, and it's wonderful to know that.
When your mother is dying, I just found it so beautiful how you cared so deeply for her through the final hours and the final days. And even though she wouldn't open up to you about Jay's death and about Jay, that you just were full of love and full of care. Can you talk about that and how you did that?
Thank you. Well, if someone brings you into this world and takes care of you, to me, it doesn't matter if they've wronged you or if your relationship is fraught. The reality is that deeper thing that I was just talking about, that there's some kind of very profound connection that's way beyond this lifetime in that. And so I was able to really feel that. And I love caring for things. Like right now at my house, I have 6 baby chicks and, and I'm always ready to get a new baby puppy or something. So it's bigger than that, right? More than just the deep feeling I have for caring for things. But to be with anyone when they're transitioning, it's a quality of experience that there's nothing else like it. You don't just feel, the smells in the room and the person in front of you. You feel the space where they're going. And so it's just, if I'm all covered with pain and I can't experience that, I can't plug into that, I'm missing something huge. So I was really able to plug into this profound quality of my mother going somewhere. And so, translates to love very much in the body.
Christina, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your book and your life.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me here. It's really fun.
Christina Amelong is a Madison native and author of What My Brother Knew, a memoir. It's about the power of facing the mystery of death head on and the legacy of her brother, Jay Amelong.
Shop classes are making a big comeback in Wisconsin high schools with hands-on instruction in fields like plumbing, carpentry, and welding.
On a future program, we're going to hear from a former English teacher who's now leading a welding course at Middleton High School.
Do you have fond memories of shop class or industrial arts? Maybe you've seen the skilled trades become highly desirable, or you have a story to tell about being an apprentice or mentoring new tradespeople.
Reach out to us with your story about the trades, how it changed you, your career, your community. Email Wisconsin Today at WPR.org or call or text us at 888-642-0232. Once again, the number is 888-642-0232.
Wisconsin Today producers include Colleen Leahy and Royce Podeswa. Our technical directors are Sarah Hopeful and Tyler Ditter. Learn more about us at wpr.org/Wisconsin Today. I'm Rob Farrett.
And I'm Kate Archer-Kent. You're listening to WPR News.